Welcome to another episode of CrockTalk TV Podcast. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And if you're not already, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button right now. Subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/CrockTalk. You know what? I don't even know why I introduced all this stuff. It's right there. See it everywhere you can find me, right there. All right. So I appreciate y'all all jumping in. I want to get into talking about some receivers, some guys who, do we expect them to take that year or two leap, right? Talk about some of their circumstances, quarterback situations, things like that. And I thought these three guys were very intriguing. All right. And the three guys that we're going to get into today, definitely Brandon Aiyuk of the 49ers, T. Higgins of Cincinnati Bengals, and my third guy, who's my third guy? Jeudy. All right, Jeudy. So before we get started again, make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell so you guys get notified when I go live. And yeah, man, this is the podcast right here. It's going live on the podcast. So I'm in the dream. What up, baby? I got to go on your podcast, man. Make sure you DM me, hit me. All right. So, man, let's get started. We ain't going to be in here too long. We got playoff basketball games on right now. I know y'all want to get to that. So, but let's talk some football a little bit. Let's start with T. Higgins because I think he's kind of I don't want to say the forgotten one, but T. Higgins is, people kind of gloss over what he did last year. I thought he had a really good, productive season, especially for someone who definitely did not get a whole lot of targets to start the year. Let's bring up some of T. Higgins' numbers, all right? And then we'll talk about maybe where I see it kind of going in the future, or as far as year two, all right? But T. Higgins, all right, played in 16 games. Now, he played in 16 games, but he got hurt at like the very, very beginning of the week 16 game. I actually thought that there was a chance he would go over 1,000 yards, right? 1,000 yards. Nobody talks about him. We're talking about somebody who had over 900 yards and half the season had to play with who? Like who was their backup quarterback after Joe Burrow went down? It was like, now T. Higgins, he was someone who I had re-ranked my top 5 receivers based on landing spots. And T. Higgins came in at number 1. I just thought, with his ability to be able to, make those contested catches, play big at the catch point, you kind of match that with Joe Burrow and who he was and why he was so successful, at LSU. And I'm like, man, this is a great matchup right here. So much so that I like that landing spot for T. Higgins more so than any other receiver in this class. And it definitely was heading in that right direction before obviously Joe Burrow got hurt, and then T. Higgins as well. Now, to start the season, and let me see if I can pull up his the game log from that year. Here we go. 2020 game log. Boom. Week 1, 0 targets, zero receptions. So for someone who almost had 1,000 yards, had over 900 yards in 16 games, again, barely played that last game before, he had some kind of calf injury or something like that where he left the game, thought he was going to go over 1,000 yards. But for someone that almost had over 1,000 yards, 0 targets, 0 catches in week 1 against LA. So everything that he did was really from week 2 and on. And again, only had 1 target in that last game against Baltimore, played most of his season without Joe Burrow. I mean, everybody talks about all these other receivers and all these other guys get all these, accolades. They'll tell you about Chase Claypool and they'll tell you about, Brandon Aiyuk and all these other guys. But T. Higgins is the one guy where almost 1,000 yards, didn't even get any love at all week 1. Played half the season without Joe Burrow and was still extremely, extremely productive. And that's also on a roster where, and I know everybody's going to be like, well, his numbers are going to go down this year because Jamar Chase. The Bengals had 3 receivers, including him, but 3 receivers that had over 100 targets. All right. Tyler Boyd, over 100 targets. AJ Green, over 100 targets. And obviously T. Higgins over 100 targets, but he was right there in the mix of all that. They were all around 104, 108, 110 targets or whatever. I don't think getting Jamar Chase is going to take away from the production that T. Higgins might have. All right. Now, what can take away from T. Higgins' production? I think is if Joe Burrow comes back and he's just not himself, if he's not healthy. 49er fans, we can attest to this, right? What Jimmy Garoppolo looked like when he came back from his knee injury. And Jimmy got hurt, week 3 of the 2018 season? And when he came back, I mean, it was kind of rocky, right? It was kind of rocky. It was up and down, looked a little weird at first. It took about half the season before he started kind of feeling like himself again. So if Joe Burrow is dealing with something like that and T. Higgins has to play with that, that's a scenario there where, his production could take a bit of a dip. But I think out of I don't want to say all the second-year players, I expect him to have, the most production. But I would say if he were an 1,100-yard receiver, I would not be surprised at all. It's really going to come down to how healthy is Joe Burrow, how confident in that knee is Joe Burrow. And, if all those things check out, then I think T. Higgins would be, extremely productive. I think he is a guy like, he's not known to be this huge separator or anything like that, but I think he plays tough, he plays big. Like the same way he was winning at Clemson, he was winning that same way with Cincinnati. He wins at the catch point. He's a high point, contested catch type guy. I think he, in the offense that Cincinnati, especially when I watched them early on, it was kind of a wide open offense. Like it was an offense that they were kind of spreading it out. I think, and when I looked at the numbers for the 49ers going 21 personnel, Cincinnati was like one of the highest in like 11 personnel. So to see all, the weapons that they're going to have, Tyler Boyd coming back, Jamar Chase, obviously Joe Mixon, he's going to get in the mix, no pun intended, pass catching and things like that. Maybe they lean a little bit more on the run game, but I think T. Higgins, I think he's going to be able to play off of that extremely well. So that was the first guy that I really wanted to kind of talk about, like year 2 jump. What's it going to look like? What's it going to be? Again, if Joe Burrow is healthy, that knee is fine, and he's not thinking about it. And that's the biggest hurdle, right? The mental hurdle that a lot of guys have to kind of deal with when they're coming off of those injuries. If Joe Burrow is not having those issues, then I think we could see T. Higgins definitely have a successful season. All right. So, I got a question right here from Josiah Crocker. And long term, how does Higgins compare to the prospect like Chase? Is he destined to be the other receiver on any teams he's on, or does he have the alpha? He was the guy with Clemson. So when you watch him at Clemson, like he was the guy. So as far as him being like having that kind of alpha mentality and being able to kind of be the leader of the pack as a receiver, I think he's just fine there. Now, if he comes into a situation where he does have to be the other receiver, I think now more times than ever, we're seeing multiple guys be able to have successful seasons, right? I'd expect him to be the second most targeted player, on Cincinnati. So I think it helps, right? Not having to be the alpha. If you have a Jamar Chase and he's going to take a bulk of the targets or a bulk of the looks from, defenses, who do they game plan for? Who do they look to double team? If it is Jamar Chase, I think that even helps Higgins a little bit more. If you're looking at it from a standpoint of, look at the Vikings, and they have 2 guys that, got a lot of love, right? You got Adam Thielen and you got Justin Jefferson. And even if Thielen's the other guy, he still is going to be the other guy and be very successful. So when you look at it from that standpoint, I think T. Higgins, I expect him to have a very solid year. I think he's going to be really good. And I like the potential of T. Higgins in the offense with Joe Burrow. I still think that that's going to be one of the more overlooked second-year receivers coming out. All right, so want to start off with T. Higgins, and really like him going into year 2. Now, our next receiver, I know you guys want me to get on Brandon Aiyuk, but I'm not going to do Aiyuk just yet. We're going to talk about Jerry Jeudy. Now, let's talk about Jerry Jeudy and what he was kind of coming out, right, and what my scouting report on him was. I had him as the wide receiver 2 in that class. And for how talented he was, right? I mean, we're talking about an elite route runner. And I thought there was nobody in college football that played faster than Jerry Jeudy. And what I mean by that is he had a teammate in Henry Ruggs who was faster with the ball in his hands. But when you watch how Jerry Jeudy threatened defensive backs, throughout routes, the way he was able to really get on their toes, He ran everything at full speed. There was no wasted steps in and out of his breaks. It was like really beautiful to watch. He did that at a very high level. The issue with Jerry Jeudy was he had these drop issues. And I want to say that last year at Alabama, he dropped like 9 passes. And one thing I noticed, and I tweeted this out around that time, I said, hey, does anybody else notice that when Jerry Jeudy has bodies around him, he drops the ball? And that was something that I thought was a little consistent. Like, I did not think that he was the toughest person. And when I mean tough, I'm not saying like tough, like, oh, I won't fight you or anything like that. I mean tough in the sense of, are you going to stand in there, when you have to make a block? And I thought with him, he would like turn in his body. I was looking at it from a standpoint of, man, is he a guy who I can count on to be covered and me still throw him the ball and him be able to come down with that pass, even though somebody's bothering him or, especially in like a key moment? And the answer to that was like, no. That was something I was really worried about. And I think when it comes to like a mindset, that's the hardest thing to change. Like route running, we can improve on that. But if your mindset is kind of being challenged, and not to say like, again, I don't want to say he's like a punk or anything like that, but just his ability to really play through contact and have that mindset that no matter who is, guarding me or if they're draped all over me or whatever, I'm still going to come down with that ball. I thought that was going to be like a big issue with him. And I thought it was great, that, he's going to the Broncos and he's going to play opposite Sutton. Great. Sutton is the alpha guy, big body. He can take on that, may potentially be a wide receiver 1. Jerry Jeudy can just kind of play off of him and be the other guy, as Josiah Crocker just said. And when I watched him with the Broncos, you saw a lot of the ability that made him a top 15 pick. Just the ability to separate and things like that. But again, he had drop issues. So let me see if we have his drop numbers on here. I kind of have the Pro Football Reference kind of pulled up. I don't think I have his drop numbers right here, but I know he dropped a good amount of passes. There have been several highlight tapes made or low light tapes made where they're showing him specifically dropping perfect passes downfield that Drew Lock threw to him. And they're like, look, see, Drew Lock can't make all these throws, but, Jerry Jeudy dropped the ball. Well, guess who wasn't surprised? Me, because he dropped those same type of passes at Alabama, right? So for all the good that he does and his ability to separate and all that, like in the NFL, those windows shrink and you're not always going to be able to create separation. Now, he's still going to be able to do it. He's an elite route runner. But those are things that I thought would potentially pop up, and they did. And he had some games where those things kind of bit him in the butt. Can he improve on those things, right? Well, I think the bigger issue, and I think when we look at, a guy who is able to, be productive or, how good he's going to be the year 2 jump, all that, like, who's going to be your quarterback? So is Drew Lock going to be your quarterback? Is Drew Lock going to be Jerry Jeudy or Teddy Bridgewater? If it is Teddy Bridgewater, what type of opportunities is Jerry Jeudy going to be able to get, downfield or intermediate passes? I was just watching a Panthers game the other day, and I was watching Teddy Bridgewater and how he plays, and it was interesting, to say the least. Very inaccurate on a lot of throws, but then he, boom, throw the ball downfield and, just randomly drop a ball in there on the money. And maybe it was Robbie Anderson, or I saw Christian McCaffrey make an amazing catch. Curtis Samuel had made an amazing catch. It was the game against the Chiefs. So if you guys go back and watch that game, you'll see some like big time catches where maybe the ball wasn't very accurate. There were several times where receivers had to like drop down to the ground to catch passes and eliminated like run after catch abilities. Those are things that you'll probably have to deal with if Teddy Bridgewater is your guy. All right. Now, there was one game I was watching. I think it was, I guess the Chiefs, or it was like the game after that. Bridgewater started off the game 9 for 9 and like with like 2 touchdowns. But 3 of those passes were like in the dirt. Another couple were like screen passes. So those are things that you kind of have to use with context. How is he going to help a guy like Jerry Jeudy take that year 2 leap? See Josiah Crocker in here again. He's able to drop some stats for us. He says Jerry Jeudy, 12 drops in 2020. Guess who's not surprised? Me, because that looked like it could potentially be an issue for Jerry Jeudy heading into the NFL. Now, I'd say out of those 12 drops from Jerry Jeudy, when did they happen? And I'd bet 9 of the 12 probably when there were bodies around him, because I thought that was his biggest issue in college. So Jerry Jeudy, 1, got to hang on to the ball. So let's see if he improves on that. 2, who's going to be his quarterback? Is it going to be Teddy Bridgewater? Is it going to be Drew Lock? Is there going to be more consistency from Drew Lock? Or is he going to continue to turn the ball over at an alarming rate? Those are things right there that can definitely hinder Jerry Jeudy. And it's tough when you see a guy like that who has all the ability, but there's just these little subtle things that are kind of blocking him a little bit from being as good as he can be. And even then, he still had a solid year. I mean, we're talking about somebody who had, 52 catches, 856 yards. 3 touchdowns isn't great, but all right, rookie, you'd expect a year 2 jump, and that's what this whole conversation is about. Will there be that year 2 jump for Jerry Jeudy? 52 catches, 856. I'd assume that he'd improve on that, but I think a lot of it's going to come down to, 1, again, you got to hang on to the ball, especially in tough contested catch situations, and 2, what's the quarterback situation going to be like? I'm very intrigued to kind of see that. All right, guys, I know a lot of you guys have been waiting on this. All right, so we're going to get into the last guy here, and we got Brandon Aiyuk of the 49ers heading into his second year. Last year, obviously, rookie out of Arizona State. It was interesting kind of watching him at Arizona State because he wasn't a guy that – I'm pulling up his stats right now. It didn't necessarily pop off the screen, right? I mean, obviously, he put up terrific numbers. He had over 1,200 yards and whatnot. So he had good numbers, but we're talking about Arizona State. But it didn't really pop. And a lot of it, you see a lot of screens and things like that where they're just trying to get the ball in his hands. Saw the game winner against Oregon down the left sideline. That was amazing to see. But he was kind of a little bit under the radar. There were some guys I've seen that really liked him. I know I had limited tape on him coming out of Arizona State. But after the draft, I was able to really dive into Brandon Aiyuk's film. And I'm like, oh, I see exactly why Kyle Shanahan likes him. When you talk about somebody that's twitchy, sudden, explosive first step, right? And his first step looked a lot like a basketball player step. If you can think of, Allen Iverson at the top of the key, and just when Allen Iverson gives you that first step right now, Carmelo Anthony was really good with it, right? That first step, Brandon Aiyuk had that. And then not only did they have that, I mean, he was catching slant routes and taking it to the crib. You watch some games against Oregon, watch him turn around guys in space. And those are guys that are really threatened by his ability to win vertically. Saw the same thing against USC, turning around guys at the line of scrimmage, where he wasn't giving them much, but I think his first step is a lot quicker than what it looked like, on film. So see him turning around guys consistently, whether it was outside, whether it was in the slot, see his run after catch ability, and you're like, man, I can see why Kyle Shanahan would like him. Rookie year came in, I'd see off top, had solid numbers, 60 catches, 748 yards, 5 touchdown catches, also had another 2 rushing touchdowns. So in over 800 yards total. He was very productive, only played in 12 games, missed 4 games because I want to say 2 games due to COVID, missed the first game of the season due to an injury in training camp, and missed the last game due to a high ankle sprain. So with Jerry Jeudy, obviously you would love to see him. Can you just put it together for a full year? 49ers are looking for a guy to take control of that, just being that receiver that is a do-it-all guy that they can count on. And they've kind of been juggling guys. Okay, is it going to be Deebo Samuel? Obviously you have George Kittle, who's essentially the number 1 target. But who's going to play off him? Who's going to be that big play guy? I talked about the Bengals potentially having 2 guys who are, over 1,000 yards. Can the 49ers get that? I'd assume, yeah. We're talking about a full, healthy, 17-game season now. So 1,000 yards shouldn't be the benchmark anymore, not with an extra added game. But when you think of, the numbers, and we see Josiah talk about it right here, those stats on 12 games with our quarterback room last year is incredible. And I agree. I think it's very encouraging. Now, what can Aiyuk do, with a more stable situation at quarterback, whether it's Garoppolo or Trey Lance? Can he be more productive? Can he be, more consistent with the hands, had a few drops in there in some moments. One I know that for sure led to an interception, kind of a low pass that kind of ended up popping up in the air. All right. There is an area where I would like to see him improve, and that is his like run after catch. Now, I think one thing that was really weird to watch because of how it looked, guys were kind of bouncing off of him. That was intriguing. Like, and what I mean by bouncing off him, it was just like he was kind of just running, and like a guy would just bounce off him and kind of break a tackle or whatever. We obviously saw the amazing play against Philadelphia where he kind of did like this little hop skip thing and it continued to run and jumped over a player going into the end zone. So I was like, wow. Start talking about the type of ability that he has, big play type of ability. But I would like to see Aiyuk just look a little bit more comfortable with the ball in his hands after the catch. So, okay, you catch a ball in space. Can you make a guy miss and, get up out of there? Those are things that I would definitely like to see him be a little bit more comfortable consistently doing. We didn't see him really make guys miss a whole lot in space and then run off on guys. So I think that's an area where I would clearly like to see Aiyuk just do a little bit better from that standpoint. What's up, man? How you doing? You guys good? No, you guys good. So that's what I would like to see a little bit more from that standpoint. So I'll start to take some questions here. Let's see. Aiyuk underrated. People remember Aiyuk's name after this year. I think so. I think he can definitely be a guy that, ends up doing, big things, especially if the quarterback situation is a little bit more ideal. All right. If Jerry Jeudy looked skinny last year, how skinny is D. Smith about to look? I talked about that today on Twitter where, Smith had, Jerry Jeudy had like 30 pounds on Smith, and Smith looked really skinny. So, yeah, Smith is going to look skinny, but I think Smith actually played bigger, played stronger than Jerry Jeudy, even at Alabama. So, the weight, definitely there's a big difference there, but in the sense of how they played, I thought Smith was actually the one that played a little bit bigger. All right, guys. Well, I got company in here, so I'm going to wrap it up now. I'll get to you guys. I'll be back on here Thursday to talk about some rising stars. I appreciate everybody coming on. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Check out the podcast. It should be up on Apple Pod now, I think. I'm kind of waiting to get that whole thing cleared up or whatever. It's taking a little while, but everything else is cleared up on every other streaming site. So go to, Spotify or whatever. It's on there. I appreciate y'all checking in. I'm out of here. Peace.